She wasn't supposed to be there. Emily Carter's heels clicked on the marble floor like gunshots in a cathedral. Her breath trembled in her throat as she stepped beneath the chandelier's light, the sequins on her second-hand dress catching. The glare like broken glass. This wasn't survival. It was surrender disguised as grace. She told herself it was for Lily, but it still felt like a funeral. Every eye in the room turned as the host appeared, a serpent in a velvet suit. "Ladies and gentlemen," he purred, "welcome to tonight's acquisition event." The women in the room stood like porcelain figures. Some resigned, others hardened. Emily wasn't one of them. She was cracked all over, but still holding, barely. In the crowd of suits and diamonds, she was the only one who looked like she'd forgotten how to breathe. Behind her eyes, all she saw was Lily's face, feverish, sleeping, wired to machines. The doctor's words echoed, "She needs the treatment in 2 weeks, or—" Emily had walked out before the sentence could finish. She'd already buried one parent. She couldn't bury a child. Not hers. Not Lily. That's how she ended up here, trading flesh for future, soul for signature. "Lot 7, the host called. "Emily Carter." Her legs buckled as she stepped forward, knees trembling beneath thrift store chiffon. Spotlights blazed. Down, erasing her features, making her just another outline on a stage of secrets. She forced her eyes to the ground. Her worth was about to be measured in silence and money. The room went quiet as numbers started flying. 50,000, 200, 500,000. Then a pause. A voice cut through the air like frost. 1 million, he said. No hesitation, no counteroffer. No one else dared speak. The hammer fell with a sharp crack. Emily flinched as if struck. He rose from the shadows, tall and still, a man carved in winter. Nathan Blackwood, billionaire, widower, and recluse. A man who didn't believe in marriage or mercy. He offered her his hand without a smile. "You'll come with me." Emily took it because the alternative was nothing, and nothing was what waited at home in the hospital ward. They walked down a corridor of silence. The door at the end opened to a private room, wood-paneled, firelit, lined with law books. He gestured to a chair. She sat, afraid to touch anything. He placed a folder in front of her. "This is the agreement. No flourish, no coercion, just fact. You'll carry a child. You'll relinquish all rights upon birth. You'll receive the funds tomorrow." Emily read the words like they were in another language. Fertility treatments, isolation, confidentiality clauses. The ink bled like betrayal. "Why?" she whispered. "Why do this?" Nathan's face didn't move. "Legacy," he said. "I don't want a wife, I want an heir. Cold, final, not cruelty, business." She closed her eyes. The image of Lily's IV drip flashed behind her lids. "And if I say no?" she asked. Nathan didn't blink. "You already signed the pre-agreement. Walk out now, and you leave with nothing." Her hands trembled as she reached for the pen. She didn't sign for herself. She signed for a child who still believed bedtime stories could save the world. When she finished, Nathan folded the contract like a piece of origami and placed it in a drawer. "You'll be taken to the estate tomorrow. Dr. Adler will handle your examinations." Emily opened her mouth, then closed it. Words felt useless. Now, she wasn't a person anymore. She was a vessel. Outside, the city howled with sirens and neon ghosts. Emily walked to the curb, barefoot, dress clinging to her skin. A black car waited, gleaming like judgment. The driver tipped his hat, silent as death. She looked back once, then stepped in. She didn't cry. Not yet. She was saving that for the quiet between contractions months from now, when she'd remember the day she gave her future away. Back in her apartment, Lily's blanket was still. On the couch, untouched. Emily curled around it and whispered a promise into the fabric. "I'll come back. I swear, baby, I'll come back." Morning came fast and merciless. She kissed her daughter's forehead at the hospital, hiding the truth behind a smile. "Mama's just going on a little trip, all right? Be brave." Lily blinked up at her, trust glowing in her sickly eyes. Emily nearly broke, nearly confessed. Everything, but she didn't. That would have made it real. Instead, she whispered a lullaby into her child's ear, the same one her mother once sang when the world seemed too cruel. Emily wasn't running away. She was running toward something, a cure, a future, even if it meant breaking herself apart piece by piece. When she returned to the car, the driver simply opened the door again. The estate loomed in the distance. Stone, walls, iron gates, the kind of place fairy tales came to die. She took one last look at the city skyline. Then, without a word, she disappeared behind the black-tinted glass. The Anderson estate didn't feel like a home. It felt like a mausoleum built by someone trying to forget. As the car pulled through wrought-iron gates, Emily stared out at the sweeping grounds. Fountains sprayed into the crisp air, statues loomed over manicured lawns, and every window on. The house glared down like an unblinking eye. The silence that followed was not peace, it was something colder, hollowed out. Inside, the floors shone like mirrors. A woman with tight grey hair and eyes like razors greeted her. "You must be Miss Carter," she said. "I'm Greta. I oversee the household." Her voice held no warmth but no cruelty either, just order. Emily nodded, holding her duffel bag like a lifeline. Greta didn't offer to take it. That, Emily realized, was her first lesson here. Nothing would be offered freely. Greta led her through the house with quiet efficiency. "You'll be in the East Wing. Meals are served promptly. Dr. Adler will arrive tomorrow for your medical intake. Mr. Blackwood will not be available unless summoned." The corridors twisted, like a labyrinth. The deeper they went, the quieter it got. Emily's footsteps echoed behind Greta's like a ghost learning to walk. Her room was larger than her entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows faced a forest she hadn't noticed. The bed looked untouched, like a prop on a stage. "Everything you need is here," Greta said, her voice softening by a fraction, "but nothing you don't." Emily didn't ask what that meant. She didn't want to know. The door clicked, shut behind her with a finality that made her flinch. She stood in the center of the room, afraid to sit, to touch anything. Then she noticed it. On the desk, a single envelope with her name in crisp ink. Inside, a short note in Nathan's handwriting. "There is purpose in this. You may not see it now, but someday you will." No greeting, no signature, just that. Cold belief. Purpose like a sword you fall on. Emily crumpled the note, then smoothed it out again. The gesture felt too final. Instead, she folded it back and slipped it into the desk drawer. She didn't belong here, but she had nowhere else to go. That night, sleep didn't come. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, hearing every creak, every tick of the clock. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees like secrets. The next morning arrived grey and sharp. Dr. Adler, a man with silver glasses and a surgeon's hands, conducted her intake with clinical detachment. "You're healthy, fertile. We'll begin hormone preparation immediately." He didn't ask if she was ready, just nodded and made notes on a clipboard. She wasn't a person in this place. She was a procedure. Emily nodded along, biting the inside of her cheek until she tasted blood. Afterward, she wandered the halls alone. The mansion was so quiet it hurt. She passed closed doors, portraits of ancestors who stared down like judges, and a piano that hadn't been touched in years. She used to play, before Lily, before life folded inward like a dying flower. Her fingers hovered over the keys, but didn't press. Not yet. That evening, Nathan appeared at her door without warning. No knock, just his shadow filling the frame. "May I come in?" he asked. She hesitated, then stepped aside. He didn't sit. "I'm not here to discuss feelings," he said. "Only progress." Emily folded her arms. "There's nothing to progress yet." He blinked once. "There will be. You agreed to this." She snapped. "I agreed to save my daughter, not to be your lab rat." Nathan didn't flinch. "That's exactly why I chose you." His voice was too calm. "Because you act on what matters, not what feels good." She stared at him, hating how calm he was. "You don't even want this child, do you?" she asked. A flicker crossed his face. "Barely there. Want isn't the point. Legacy is." And with that, he turned and walked away. Emily stood there, shaking, not from fear, but from something colder, something that felt like erasure. She wanted to scream, to throw something, to run, but there was no one to run to, just Lily's voice in her memory, asking when Mommy would come back. That night she sat on the window seat watching fog roll over the garden. She whispered, "I'll come back, baby, just hold on." The mansion remained still, but something in Emily didn't. A fuse had been lit, and no matter how silent this place was, she would not let herself disappear in it. She would not forget who she was, and neither, if Nathan Blackwood had his way, would he. Emily's third morning in the estate began with a storm. Not outside, the sky was clear, blue, mocking, but inside her, a tempest brewed. She had woken from a dream where Lily's hospital bed was empty, and no one knew where her daughter had gone. The scream had caught in her throat as she sat upright in the silken sheets, sweat clinging to her skin like guilt. She didn't dress. For breakfast, she didn't brush her hair. She walked barefoot down the grand hall, ignoring the stares of the staff, the immaculate stillness of the house. She wasn't here to impress anyone. She wasn't here to be beautiful. She was here because she had sold her body to a man who believed love was a weakness, and now she had to live with it. The dining room stretched wide, with ceilings like cathedrals. Nathan sat at the head of the long table, reading a newspaper, sipping coffee. He didn't look up as she entered. "You're late," he said without inflection. "Am I?" she replied, sliding into a seat 2 chairs away from him. "I must have lost track of time between signing my soul away and weeping in the mirror." Nathan folded the paper calmly. "Sarcasm is an unproductive form of rebellion." Emily stared at him. "And silence is a convenient form of control." He didn't respond immediately. Instead, he set his coffee down and met her eyes. "You're not a prisoner here." She leaned forward, her voice a knife. "Aren't I? You bought me. You chose me like you'd choose a wine for dinner." "No," he said softly. "I chose you because you were already willing to sacrifice everything." The words hit harder than she expected. For a moment, she didn't speak. Then, "Don't make a martyr of me to justify your transaction." "I'm not justifying anything," he replied. "I'm explaining." Emily stood, her chair scraping against the marble. "Save it." She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. "You've never asked what happens after." She looked over her shoulder. "Because I assumed nothing does." Nathan rose slowly, walking toward her. "What if I told you I don't know either?" For the first time his voice cracked, not much, but enough. Emily froze. "Then why do this?" He didn't answer. Instead, he handed her a file. "This is the donor profile. The embryo is already viable. We proceed in 3 days." She took the file with trembling hands, not looking at it. "And after I give birth?" "You leave," he said, "unless you choose not to." Those final words hung in the air like smoke. She didn't know what they meant. She wasn't sure. He did either. Back in her room, Emily opened the file. It was clinical, precise, anonymous. The donor's IQ, height, blood type. Nothing human. She closed it and stared out the window. 3 days, she whispered. Then I belonged to someone else, completely. That night, unable to sleep, Emily wandered the halls until she found herself in the west wing. A door was slightly ajar. Inside was a room full of dust-covered furniture and books. She entered quietly. On the wall was a photograph, an old one, of a girl with wild curls laughing in a field of lavender. Beneath it, a plaque. Clara Blackwood, 1987-2010. Emily stepped closer, reading the faded inscription. Clara, Nathan's sister. The one no one mentioned. The one whose death cracked something in him. She didn't know the story, but in that photo, Clara looked free in a way Nathan never had. Emily sat on a nearby chair and stared at the photograph until dawn. Somewhere between silence and sorrow, something began to shift. In the morning, she didn't speak to Nathan, but when she passed him in the hall, she paused. "I found Clara's room," she said. His expression didn't change. "And?" She looked happy. Nathan hesitated. She was. Before. Before what? He looked away. "Before I became the only one left." Emily didn't ask more. She simply nodded and walked on. But something cracked in her then, not in a way that hurt, but in a way that opened. Maybe they were both. Broken. But maybe, in this place of ghosts and marble, they didn't have to stay that way. The clinic smelled like antiseptic and money. The morning of the procedure arrived faster than Emily could prepare for. Greta knocked softly at dawn, holding a tray with warm tea, a fresh robe, and a sealed envelope. "From Mr. Blackwood," she said. Emily nodded but didn't open it. Her hands were already shaking, and she needed them still. Down the hall, the clinic waited. White walls, glass panels, soft voices. Dr. Adler greeted her in scrubs, clipboard in hand. "We'll begin with a final check and hormone flush, then the embryo transfer." He spoke like he was reading a script, not addressing a woman about to change her entire life. Emily nodded numbly. Her throat ached from holding in everything she hadn't said. The procedure was clinical, painless, and mechanical. Emily lay, still as masked professionals moved around her. Above her, a bright circular light illuminated her stillness like a stage. As the process began, she stared at the ceiling, refusing to blink. Her heart pounded louder than the instruments. "What have I done?" she thought. But it was too late for doubt now. Afterward, they wheeled her back to her room. Greta helped her into bed without speaking. Emily didn't cry. Not yet. The tears had moved somewhere deeper, beneath the skin, beneath the cells. She stared at the ceiling for hours, her hand resting flat on her abdomen, as if the weight of what might grow that could tether her to purpose. Nathan didn't visit that night. She wasn't sure if she was relieved or hurt, probably both. The next morning, she dressed slowly, every motion deliberate. Her body felt like it belonged to someone else. The mirror showed her the same reflection, but her eyes looked different, older, quieter. She spent the day walking the gardens, the stone paths cold beneath her shoes. In the late afternoon, she found herself in the greenhouse. It had been abandoned, clearly once loved and long forgotten. Overgrown roses, neglected orchids, a tangle of color and decay. She crouched beside a lavender bush, touched a withered bloom. It reminded her of the photo of Clara, wild and alive. Maybe she planted this, Emily thought, and somehow that made the space sacred. Footsteps crunched behind her. She turned, expecting Greta, but it was Nathan. He stood in the doorway, not entering, just watching. "You found her sanctuary," he said. Emily didn't rise. "Why let it rot?" she asked. His gaze drifted to the ivy-covered wall. "Because I couldn't come in without remembering her." A pause. "And I couldn't remember her without breaking." Emily nodded slowly. She loved the wild things. She hated control, he said, which made her impossible in a house like this. She sounds brave. She was, he whispered, and reckless. His voice caught on the edge of memory. She died. Alone. Emily looked down at the soil. We all are in the end, unless someone stays. They didn't speak for a while, just stood in the presence of ghosts. Then quietly Nathan said, "You don't have to stay in your wing, you're not confined." Emily raised an eyebrow. "But I am expected to be invisible, correct?" He didn't answer, because they both knew the truth. Her existence here had been necessary, not welcomed. That night, Emily returned to the greenhouse. She brought pruning shears and gloves and began clearing the dead growth. She wasn't sure why. Maybe because something had to be beautiful again. Maybe because Clara deserved more than dust. Or maybe because, for the first time since arriving, she wanted to create something that couldn't be bought. Nathan watched her from the shadows more often after that. He never interrupted, just observed, as if he too was remembering how to breathe among the living. One evening she caught him watching and asked, "What do you see when you look at me?" He replied without hesitation, "Someone who keeps choosing to fight, even when the war is inside her." Emily didn't know what to say to that, so she just nodded and kept working. In the silence, something grew between them. Not romance. Not yet, but the recognition of another person carrying scars where no one could see, and maybe that was more intimate than love. Maybe that was the beginning of it. Days passed in a rhythm Emily never chose. Morning exams, evening walks, quiet meals in echoing halls. But somewhere beneath the repetition, something shifted. She stopped flinching when Nathan entered a room. He, in turn, stopped avoiding her eyes. Their exchanges remained brief, almost clinical, yet tension now shared space with curiosity. They were two people orbiting the same wound. It was during one of her quiet walks that Greta found her in the library. "You've got a call," she said softly. "I told them to keep it short." Emily's heart stuttered. There was only one voice she needed to hear. She all but ran to the nearest landline. "Hello?" she said, her voice breathless. "Mommy?" Lily's voice, thin and tired, came through the static. "When are you coming back?" Emily pressed her palm against her chest, trying to keep it from breaking open. "Soon, sweetheart. I'm doing something very important, okay? Something to help you feel better. Miss Janine says you're on a secret mission." Emily choked on a laugh. "That's right, a mission, and you're the bravest girl I know." Lily's breath crackled in the receiver. "I drew you a rocket ship. It's flying through the stars." Tears slid down Emily's cheeks. "You saved me a seat, okay?" "Always," Lily whispered, and the line went dead. Emily stared at the silent phone for a long time, the warmth of her daughter's voice still humming in her chest. That night, she didn't return to her room. She went to the piano instead. The keys were dusty, untouched for years. She sat, hesitated, then let her fingers fall into a melody she hadn't played since college. A lullaby. Soft, sad, stubborn. Each note wove a story of every moment she couldn't say aloud. She played until the silence felt less cruel, until the music filled corners of the mansion that even memory had abandoned. When she finished, Nathan stood in the doorway. "That was unexpected," he said. She turned slowly. "It's the only language I remember how to speak." He nodded. "Once, stepping into the room, Clara used to play, badly, but she didn't care. She sounds like someone who didn't follow rules. She didn't recognize them." His voice held both admiration and regret. Emily didn't ask what had changed. She already knew. Grief was a sculptor. It reshaped the most defiant souls into statues. "I'm not trying to replace anyone," she said quietly. "I know." He leaned on the piano. but you're waking up a house that forgot how to feel. She looked at him, something unspoken passing between them, a truce maybe, or a test. The next morning, Greta brought breakfast with a note. Drawing room. 10 a.m. N. Emily hesitated. Her instinct was to ignore it, but she dressed, pulled her hair back, and arrived at the appointed time. Nathan was already there, standing by the fireplace, a glass of water in his hand. "I want to talk," he said. She raised an eyebrow. "I didn't know you could. I can, I just don't." He motioned for her to sit. "I want to tell you about Clara, about why I built this place the way I did, why I made that offer." Emily sat, eyes sharp. "I'm listening." He took a breath, and for the first time his voice faltered. "She overdosed 8 years ago. I didn't know she was using. I was too busy being who my father needed me to be." He turned toward the fire. "After she died, I realized there was no one left. No family, no legacy, just titles, assets, silence." "So you decided to create one," Emily said. "By erasing everyone else from the equation." "Yes," he looked at her. "Until you." Emily's heart beat unevenly. "I didn't come here to be saved. And I didn't ask you to, but you're not what I expected. You've changed everything just by surviving." They sat in silence for a long while. Then Nathan said, "Tell me about your daughter." Emily smiled softly. "Lily is sunshine in a world full of thunder. She's clever and stubborn and draws stars on everything. She still thinks love can fix the world." Nathan watched her with something like awe. "Maybe she's right." Emily met his eyes. "Maybe she's the only one who is." The days that followed were quieter but not empty. Emily began to find places where the silence didn't suffocate her. She walked the gardens without aim, often finding herself beside the lake just before sundown. The water mirrored the sky, calm on the surface, unknowable beneath. She'd sit on the cold stone bench and breathe, deeply, fully, for the first time in weeks. One afternoon, Nathan joined her without invitation. He didn't sit, only stood a few feet away, hands in his coat pockets. "Dr. Adler says the transfer was successful," he said. Emily didn't reply. "I thought you should hear it from me." She nodded slowly. "I already felt it." Nathan looked at her then. "Are you all right?" The question caught her off guard, not for what he said, but how he said it. "I'm existing," she answered honestly. "Not quite here, not quite there. Just suspended." Nathan seemed to understand. "That's how grief begins too." She turned her head. "Is that what this is to you, grief?" He paused, then said, "No, this feels like exposure. Like standing on a ledge I spent my life pretending didn't exist." Emily watched the lake. "We all live on ledges. Some just learn how to balance." That night she couldn't sleep, not because of fear or pain, but because her thoughts buzzed with unfamiliar warmth. She wandered the halls until her feet led her to the library. Inside, the fireplace glowed dimly. Nathan was already there, sitting with a book open but unread. He looked up, surprised, then gestured to the chair across from him. She sat. Neither of them spoke for a while. The fire cracked between them like punctuation. Eventually, Emily picked up a book from the table, Wuthering Heights. She smiled faintly. "My mother loved this, said it was about passion. I thought it was about cruelty." Nathan leaned back. "Clara adored it. She thought love only counted if it hurt." Emily nodded. "Then she must have loved deeply." Nathan studied her. "And you? What do you believe?" She considered. "I believe love isn't supposed to rescue us. It's supposed to remind us why we keep trying." A long silence followed. Then he said, almost a whisper, "You're braver than I expected." Emily looked at him, eyes calm. "No, I'm just desperate in a direction you've never walked." In the following days they fell into a pattern. Quiet mornings, check-ups, books exchanged in silence. Music hummed softly through the halls again. Greta began to leave fresh flowers in Emily's room, lavender mostly. One morning she also left a note. He's watching, but not for control. For hope. Emily tucked it into her drawer, unsure whether it was reassurance or warning. The pregnancy settled in her body like a quiet drumbeat. She was nauseous, exhausted, and oddly serene. Dr. Adler confirmed steady growth. "You're healthy, the embryo's secure, no complications." He said it with his usual detachment, but Emily caught the shift in his tone, as if even the clinical walls of the estate were beginning to soften. That evening, Greta brought a tray to her room. Fresh orange juice, lemon cookies. Emily blinked. "Cravings," she murmured. "He noticed?" Greta smiled faintly. "He listens. He just doesn't know how to ask." Emily bit into a cookie and sat by the window, watching the stars. For the first time, she thought, maybe this won't end the way I feared. A few days later, the phone rang again. Lily's voice burst through the speaker, full of color. "Mummy, I drew us a spaceship with 3 seats. One for you, one for me, and one for the baby." Emily laughed through her tears. 3 seats, huh? Mm-hmm. "Miss Janine says you're a hero." Emily closed her eyes. "I'm just a mum, trying not to fall apart. But you always catch me," Lily said, "even when I fall." After the call, Emily stayed at the window long after the stars came out. She didn't know if this house could ever feel like home, but somewhere in its bones, something was changing, and for the first time, she didn't feel entirely alone in the shift. The estate didn't speak in words, it whispered in gestures. A new blanket folded at the foot of her bed, a repaired doorknob that once stuck, the sound of piano keys being gently tuned downstairs. Emily noticed it all. She didn't thank anyone. She wasn't sure who to thank, but the message was clear. She was no longer invisible. Nathan began joining her for tea. Never at the table, never with an invitation. He'd stand near the window, or pace softly around the room as she drank. Their conversations were brief, but something unspoken flowed between them. Once she asked him, "What's the scariest thing you've ever done?" He paused. "Admitting I didn't want to be my father." Emily nodded. "That's a good start." She told him about Lily, about the days she cried behind closed doors, the nights she skipped meals to stretch food for another week, about the moment the hospital told her they'd need to discharge her daughter without payment. Nathan listened, not just with his ears, but with his whole presence. That more than his money or walls made her trust him a little more. One morning, she found a framed photo placed discreetly on her nightstand. It was Lily, her old school picture, gap-toothed and grinning. Beneath it, in simple script, was one word: home. Emily's hand trembled as she picked it up. She hadn't brought that photo with her. She'd left it behind, afraid of what it might remind her. Nathan had found it, had brought it here. Without saying a word, she confronted him gently. "Why did you bring me this?" He looked at her steadily. "Because I needed you to remember what you're fighting for, in case you forgot." Emily swallowed. "I never forget. Not for a second." "I know," he said. "That's what scares me about you." She didn't ask what he meant. Deep down, she already understood. Later that week, Greta approached her with something new, a key. "To the greenhouse," she said. "It's yours now. He asked me to give it to you." Emily blinked, surprised. "He did?" Greta's lips curved into a rare smile. "You've brought more life to this house in 1 month than he has in a decade." Emily took the key, feeling the weight of it. Not just metal, something deeper. Access, trust. She spent the afternoon in the greenhouse, alone for once, pruning, watering, humming quietly. Her hand brushed over a small, heart-shaped bloom with red edges. She didn't know its name. but it reminded her of Lily's drawings, fragile things shaped like strength. A soft voice broke. "The quiet. Bleeding heart," Nathan said. "Clara's favorite." Emily didn't turn. She had good taste. He stepped closer. "She said it was the only flower honest enough to admit when it hurt." Emily looked up. "Did she know how much you needed her?" "I think she knew I didn't know how to need anyone," he said. "Is that why you wanted an heir?" Nathan met her eyes. "I wanted proof I existed, something that would outlast me. But then you came, and I started wondering if there was another way." That night, the storm rolled in. Thunder rumbled low across the hills. Rain lashed against the windows like memory clawing at the present. Emily stood on her balcony, watching lightning split the sky. Nathan appeared beside her, silent. He didn't speak, he didn't need to. They just stood there, shoulder to shoulder, not quite touching. After a long pause, he asked, "What did you think of me when we first met?" Emily didn't hesitate. "A man who builds walls, so he never has to watch anyone leave again." Nathan breathed out slowly. "And now?" She turned to him. "A man standing on the other side of the wall, wondering if it's too late to tear it down." He didn't move, but his hand brushed hers, lightly, unintentionally intentional. It wasn't a question. It wasn't an answer. It was a beginning. And this time, Emily didn't pull away. The sun broke through the clouds the next morning, with theatrical precision. Light streamed into Emily's room as if the world had decided, finally, to soften. She moved slower now. The nausea came in waves, her back ached and her emotions sat just beneath the surface. But she welcomed it. Pain meant progress, discomfort meant growth. Something was happening inside her, and it had nothing to do with contracts. That afternoon, she found herself back in the greenhouse. The bleeding heart plant had begun to bloom. In earnest, its tiny red petals curved like secrets. Emily knelt beside it, hands in the soil, grounding herself in something tangible. She didn't hear Nathan enter, but when he knelt beside her, she didn't flinch. "You know what this one is?" Annie asked. "I do now," she replied. "She used to talk to it," Nathan said, brushing a petal with his knuckle, "as if it could talk back." Emily smiled faintly. Maybe it did. They worked side by side for a while, pruning and planting. The silence wasn't awkward, it was full of intention. Every so often their fingers brushed, soil smeared their sleeves, sunlight spilled through the glass roof. For the first time, she felt like she belonged to something she hadn't chosen, and it didn't frighten her. Later that day, Greta approached her with a quiet smile and handed her an envelope. "Mail for you." Inside was a drawing, crayon on paper, a stick-figure girl with a round belly, a child holding her hand, and a tall man with a square jaw. Above it, in Lily's handwriting, "Miss you, Mommy, come home soon." Emily's breath hitched. Her fingers clutched the edges of the drawing as tears welled. Nathan found her in the drawing room, sitting with the sketch in her lap. He didn't speak at first. Then he sat beside her, not touching. "Is that her?" Emily nodded. "She draws what she wants to believe. She doesn't know how fragile things can be." Nathan looked at the picture. "She's part of you. I want to meet her." Emily turned, startled. "Why?" His voice was low. "Because she's part of the reason you're still breathing, and I think that matters." They didn't speak of it again, but the seed had been planted. The idea lingered. Nathan asked more questions after that, about Lily's routines, her favorite foods, her fears, and Emily cautiously began to answer. The estate changed in small ways too, soft touches on hard surfaces, fresh paint, warmer light, laughter, sometimes from Greta's direction. One evening, Emily wandered into the music room again. This time she didn't hesitate. She sat at the piano and began to play, not a lullaby, but something improvised, bold, wistful, half melody, half memory. Nathan stood in the doorway and didn't interrupt. She saw him close his eyes for a moment, as if letting go. After the last note faded, he walked to her side. "You've made this house feel alive again." Emily looked at him, her voice soft. "I didn't come here to fix anyone." "I know," he said. "Maybe that's why it's working." She didn't answer. Instead, she played one more chord, quiet, unresolved. The next morning, a package arrived. A photograph of the lake taken from her balcony, framed in wood. A note on the back, "For when you miss home." No signature, but she didn't need one. Her hands lingered on the edges of the frame. She placed it beside Lily's drawing on the nightstand. Two versions of home, neither complete without the other. In the greenhouse that afternoon, she noticed something new. A small pot placed beside the bleeding heart. A sprout barely breaking through the soil. A card next to it read, "Everything beautiful starts fragile." Emily traced the words with her thumb. This was no longer just a transaction. It was something harder, something riskier, something real, and real things, she knew too well, could be lost. The estate had begun to breathe differently. Emily felt it in the way the air moved, less suffocating, more curious. The walls no longer watched her with cold indifference. Instead, they seemed to listen, quietly absorbing her footsteps, her music, her silences. Even Greta, once a silent shadow, had begun leaving warm bread in the mornings and herbal tea in the evenings, without a word. One morning, Emily wandered into a part of the house she hadn't noticed before. A narrow staircase behind the library. It led to a small attic room filled with forgotten things, boxes, photo albums, a dusty easel. She opened one of the boxes and found a stack of drawings, some amateur, some breathtaking. A signature in the corner, Clara B. The sketches showed flowers, windows, a pair of hands playing piano. She sat on the floor, slowly turning through the pages. One drawing stopped her cold. It was a charcoal rendering of a girl in a hospital bed, eyes closed, machines surrounding her. The detail was haunting. At the bottom, a caption, "What it means to be held and not healed." Emily's throat tightened. Clara had known pain, the kind that sits in your marrow. She had understood what it meant to care from a distance. Nathan found her there, surrounded by his sister's forgotten work. He didn't say a word, just sat beside her. After a long silence, he said, she drew to process what she couldn't say. "That one," he nodded at the hospital sketch, "was after she visited a friend who didn't survive." Emily whispered, "She saw the end before it came." Nathan closed his eyes, and I refused to look. Later that day, Emily placed the drawing in her room. Not for decoration, for remembrance. She needed to be reminded that survival and surrender sometimes wore the same face. That evening, she found a note on her pillow. Simple, folded twice. Inside, "Would you like to have dinner with me?" No command, no assumption, just a question. She showed up. Of course she did. The dining room, usually cold and formal, was subtly changed. Candles instead of chandeliers, two chairs close together instead of across a vast table. Nathan stood when she entered, a gesture that felt oddly sincere. "I wasn't sure if you'd come," he said. Emily smiled faintly. "I wasn't sure either." They ate in comfortable quiet. Midway through the meal, Nathan asked, "Do you believe people can change?" Emily didn't rush to answer. "I think pain changes them. Whether they grow from it or decay depends on what they do next," he nodded. "And me?" She met his eyes. "You're still deciding." His jaw tightened, then relaxed. "Fair." After dessert, lemon tart, her favorite, they walked the garden path. The air was cool, the stars sharp and visible above. Emily wrapped her arms around herself. Nathan offered his coat. She hesitated, then accepted. "You're not who I expected," he said quietly. "Neither are you," she replied. "You're better and worse at the same time." He laughed. "That might be the truest thing anyone's ever said about me." They stopped by the lake. The moon mirrored in the still water. Nathan looked out across it. "If I lose everything, the estate, the name, the legacy, would you still see me the same?" Emily didn't look away. "I never saw you as any of that. Just a man trying not to disappear into his own silence." He turned toward her, closer than before. "And now," she exhaled, "now I see someone trying, and that's enough, for now." That night, Emily returned to her room and placed Clara's drawing beside Lily's on the nightstand. Two pieces of her world, one lost, one not yet found. The baby kicked for the first time as she lay down. A flutter, a whisper, a reminder that something was growing inside her that neither grief nor fear could erase. She fell asleep with her hand on her stomach, and for the first time in months, she dreamed not of escape, but of return. The call came early. Greta answered, her expression tightening as she handed the phone to Emily. "It's Miss Janine," she said quietly. Emily's heart lurched. "Is Lily all right?" she asked, the moment the line connected. "She's fine," Janine replied gently, "but something came in the mail. I thought you should know." Emily's grip tightened on the receiver. "What is it?" "Legal papers," Janine said. "From Trevor. He's petitioning for custody." The world fell out from beneath her. Trevor, the man who disappeared before Lily's first birthday, the man who spent years bouncing between detox clinics and new cities. Emily had never expected help from him, but she didn't expect this either. "Why now?" she whispered. Janine sighed. "Because you finally have something to lose." Emily sat down slowly, the air thick. "Do I need to come back?" "Not yet," Janine said, "but soon. There's a hearing in 2 months." Emily hung up and stared at the wall. The estate felt suddenly hostile again, its silence pressing against her chest. She went to the greenhouse, hoping for calm, but found only more questions. Nathan joined her minutes later, noticing the tension in her shoulders. "What is it?" he asked. She hesitated. "It's Lily's father. He's challenging custody." Nathan's expression didn't change, but his eyes darkened. "You didn't tell me there was another variable." "It wasn't relevant. Until now," she said. "I didn't expect him to reappear." He crossed his arms. "You kept this from me." "I kept it from myself," she snapped. "Because if I said it out loud, I'd have to accept it might happen." They stood in thick silence. Then he asked, "Do you think you'll lose her?" Emily looked away. "I don't know. He's clean now. He has a job. And I'm living in someone else's house, carrying someone else's child." Nathan stepped closer. "That child is also yours." "But not enough to fight for me in court," she said. "Not when the world thinks this is all about money." Later that night, Nathan paced in his study, papers spread across his desk. He made phone calls to lawyers, to contacts he hadn't spoken to in years. Greta entered quietly, placing tea beside him. "She's scared," she said softly. "So am I," Nathan admitted, "but I can't fix this with contracts." "No," Greta said. "You have to choose to stand beside her, not in front, not behind, beside." The next day, Emily received a visit from a woman named Meredith Raymond. Nathan had arranged the meeting. "She's the best in custody defense," he said. Meredith was sharp-eyed, no nonsense. "Your story is compelling," she told Emily. "But we need more than sympathy. We need strength, documentation, testimony." "From who?" Emily asked. "From anyone who's watched you fight," Meredith replied. "From the people who've seen who you've become." Greta was the first to volunteer. I've seen her care for herself and others without asking for anything. That's what a mother does. Nathan offered too, but Meredith hesitated. You're too involved, too conflicted. Still, he insisted, if it helps her, I'll speak. Meredith nodded. Then speak as a man, not a title. That evening, Emily sat at the piano, her fingers slow on the keys. Nathan sat nearby, silent. When she finished, he spoke without looking at her. I'm not afraid of losing money or power, but I'm terrified of losing you before I even get to know who you really are. Emily turned, eyes wet. I've lived my whole life being underestimated. I don't need rescuing. I need someone who doesn't disappear when it gets hard. He nodded. Then I'll stay, not to fix it, to witness it. She reached for his hand. That's all I've ever wanted. In the dark, with only the firelight between them, it wasn't about promises anymore. It was about presence. The courthouse loomed like an accusation. Brick and stone, glass and judgment. Emily stood outside its entrance, the wind tugging at her coat. Nathan beside her, tall and composed, a steady presence she wasn't used to depending on, but had learned to trust. Are you ready? He asked. No, she said honestly, but I'm not waiting to be. He gave a slight nod. Then, that's enough. Inside, the hearing room was smaller than she'd expected. No gallery, no crowd, just a judge, a clerk, and two opposing tables. Trevor sat across from her in a tailored suit that didn't quite hide his nervousness. His lawyer, slim and sure, shuffled through notes. When he looked up at Emily, there was no warmth, only strategy. Meredith leaned in. Stick to the facts. Show who you are. Don't let their narrative become yours. Emily nodded, clutching Lily's drawing in her pocket like armor. The hearing began. Trevor's lawyer painted a clean picture. Reformed father, steady income, recovered from addiction. He is no longer the man he once was, and the child deserves equal access to both her parents. Then came the counterportrait. Emily's absence, her employment instability, her current residence in a billionaire's estate, under terms that weren't disclosed in detail, but implied everything. We are concerned, the lawyer said, that Miss Carter's current lifestyle is not stable. It is curated, temporary. Emily's blood ran cold. Meredith stood. Objection. Assumption. The judge raised a hand. Sustained. Let's hear from the mother. Emily walked to the stand, knees steady despite the tremor in her chest. I didn't come from power or money. I came from love. I raised Lily alone with less than enough, but I gave her everything I had. And I'm still doing that. The judge tilted their head. And your current situation? Emily hesitated. Unconventional, but not unsafe. I have support. I have stability. I have a future for her that I built from nothing. Trevor stared down at the table, not cruel, not indifferent, ashamed. He didn't expect her to be composed, didn't expect her to fight with grace. Nathan was called unexpectedly. You are not her husband, not the child's father. What is your role? He spoke clearly. I'm the man who underestimated her, who tried to turn a contract into control and failed because she is more than circumstance. She's the kind of person I want my child to grow up knowing. A gasp in the silence. Even the judge seemed taken aback. Then, to everyone's surprise, Greta entered. Meredith had filed her as a late witness. She took the stand without hesitation. I've served many families, but I've never seen someone rebuild themselves as fast, as fiercely, and as quietly as Emily Carter. She's a mother, not by accident, but by fire. The judge requested a recess. Emily sat alone in the hallway, her body trembling now. Nathan returned from a phone call and placed something in her hands. A locket. Inside, a photo of Lily and a folded note. Keep going, Mommy. I'm waiting. She wept silently. Not out of fear, but release. Hours later, the decision came. In light of testimony and supporting evidence, the judge said, this court denies the petition for shared custody. Full guardianship remains with the mother. Emily didn't move at first, just stared, then nodded and breathed. Outside, Nathan held the door for her. "You did it." She looked up. "No, we did." Then she added, barely louder than the wind, "Thank you for staying." He smiled. "I'm still learning how." Back at the estate, Lily's room was being prepared. Blue walls, star-shaped lights, bookshelves waiting to be filled. Emily opened the window and let the air in. It smelled like lavender and rain. She stood still and listened, and for the first time the house didn't echo. It answered. The estate stirred with new energy. Furniture arrived wrapped in canvas. Paint fumes mingled with the scent of cinnamon from Greta's kitchen. Lily's room, once a sterile guest space, now bloomed into something entirely hers. Soft blues, constellations on the ceiling, pillows shaped like stars. Emily moved through the space carefully, like she was touching a dream she'd once been afraid to have. Nathan stood at the threshold, hands in his pockets, watching her. "She'll like it," he said. Emily smiled without looking back. "She won't just like it. She'll make it hers." He stepped in, touched the shelf where picture books had already begun to line up. "And you?" Emily turned to face him. "I'm still figuring out what mine is." Later that afternoon, Lily arrived. Janine walked her to the door, eyes shining with pride. "She's been talking about the spaceship the whole ride." Lily barreled into Emily's arms, curls bouncing, arms tight. "Mommy, I'm here. Is this the castle?" Emily laughed through her tears. "It is, baby, and it's all yours." She showed Lily the room. The bed with glowing stars, the closet with too many dresses, the drawing Emily had carried folded in her coat, now framed on the desk. Lily twirled. "It smells like cookies and sky." "That's Greta," Emily whispered. "She's kind, even when she's pretending not to be." From the hallway, Greta pretended not to overhear, but her smile gave her away. That night, they had dinner in the conservatory, just the three of them. Emily, Nathan, and Lily, who insisted on calling it the sparkly garden room. She told stories between bites, her hands dancing with excitement. Nathan listened genuinely, not just politely, and when Lily asked, "Do you live here too, Mr. Nathan?" he replied, "I do now." After Lily went to bed, Emily lingered in the garden. Nathan joined her, wordless at first. Then he said, "I thought legacy had to be something written into buildings or bound in blood. And now?" Emily asked. He looked toward the stars. "Now, I think it's the things you leave behind that can still grow without you." They walked in silence for a while. At the lake, he turned to her. "I don't want you to feel like this is a life I've built that you were invited into." Emily raised an eyebrow. "Isn't it?" "No," he said softly. "It's becoming ours. Every day you stay, you build it too." She looked down at her stomach, where the baby stirred. "Then we're three builders now." The next day, a letter arrived, stamped in gold, marked urgent. Nathan read it in silence, then handed it to Emily. "The board," he said. "They want to meet. They've heard rumors about Lily, about the baby, about you." Emily read the letter. It was filled with legal language, but the message was clear. The old guard was restless. "They're questioning my ability to lead while emotionally compromised," Nathan said. "They want to reassert control." Emily watched him carefully. "What will you do?" He took a deep breath. "I'll go, I'll face them, but I won't give them the parts of me I just started to reclaim." She reached for his hand. "Then you won't be going alone." The board meeting happened. The next morning, Emily waited at the estate, her nerves a quiet storm. When Nathan returned, he walked straight to her, kissed her forehead and said, "I told them they could have the name, the seat, the illusion. but not the life I've finally chosen." Emily blinked. "You resigned?" "I traded power for peace," he said. "For us." That evening, they sat by the piano. Emily played something new, unfinished, raw, full of minor notes and rising hope. Nathan leaned against the frame, Lily asleep upstairs. The house felt different now, not just echoing, alive. "Are you scared?" he asked. "Every minute," she said, "but I'm not running." He nodded. "Then we're finally free." Rain began just after midnight. Not a drizzle, but a downpour, heavy and wild, battering the estate's windows and drumming on the glass roof of the greenhouse like war drums. Emily woke with a sharp cramp, then another. She lay still, hands clutching her belly. It wasn't due yet, not for another month, but something inside her had shifted. Her body had decided. It was time. She called out. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried. Nathan was in her room within seconds. "Emily?" "It's happening," she gasped. "Too soon." He didn't hesitate. He lifted her in his arms and called for Greta. "Get the car. Wake Dr. Adler, now." Lily peeked out from her room, eyes wide. "Is Mommy okay?" Nathan met her gaze. "She will be. Promise." The car ride was a blur of rain-streaked windows, the scent of leather and antiseptic, Nathan gripping her hand with a steadiness she borrowed. "You're doing fine," he kept saying. "We've got this." At the hospital, the team was ready. "Doctor." Adler appeared, his mask tight, his eyes sharp. "She's early, but not dangerously so. We'll proceed carefully." Emily nodded, breath ragged. "I want to be awake." The labor was long, fierce. Hours blurred together in groans and cold. Cloths in Nathan's whispered promises and Emily's gasps. She didn't scream much, just gritted her teeth and focused on the image of Lily holding her crayon drawings, waiting for a sibling. That, and Nathan's voice. "You are not alone. Not anymore." When the baby's cry finally split the air, it was sharp, indignant, full of life. A girl, tiny, pink, lungs like thunder. Nathan looked at her and something in his face broke and healed all at once. "She's perfect," he whispered. Emily sobbed, body shaking, relief like sunlight pouring through a crack. They named her Lily Grace, for the sister he lost, for the daughter she fought for the grace that found them both when they weren't looking. Nathan held the baby close, eyes shining. "She has your strength," he said. "She has your eyes," Emily replied. "And your fire," Greta added quietly from the doorway. "God help us all." Back at the estate, everything felt new. Lily ran into Emily's arms, then peered at the baby. "She's smaller than I imagined. She's louder than I imagined," Nathan muttered. "She's family," Emily whispered, kissing both daughters. "And she's ours." But peace never stays untested. That evening, as the family rested, a call came through. Nathan took it in his study. When he returned, he looked different, tighter around the eyes. "What is it?" Emily asked. "The board is challenging the guardianship documents," he said. "They're claiming emotional compromise. They want the estate reassessed." Emily stood, fists clenched. "They want to take everything back." Nathan shook his head. "They want to punish me for choosing this life, for choosing us." "What do we do?" He met her eyes. "We fight. And this time I'm not hiding behind walls or lawyers. I'm standing right here." In the days that followed, Nathan gathered documents, testimonies, legal opinions. Emily helped where she could, but her hands were full of newborn cries and lullabies. Lily made drawings, one of the whole family standing under a rainbow with "Team Always" written above their heads. They pinned it to the refrigerator, like a flag. The hearing wasn't dramatic, just a room, some men in suits, and a few sharp questions. Nathan answered each one calmly, clearly, without flinching. "Yes, I stepped down. Yes, I chose a life outside your expectations, because For the first time, I wasn't building for ghosts. I was building for people who breathe. The board didn't strip him of the estate, perhaps out of shame, perhaps out of fear, perhaps because something in his voice made them realize he was no longer theirs to command. That night, Emily sat by the fire, baby in her arms, Lily curled beside her. Nathan entered, weary but smiling. "It's over," he said. Emily looked up. "What's left?" He sat beside her. "Just everything worth keeping." Spring came without asking. The estate woke slowly, buds on trees, lavender reblooming. In the greenhouse, birds nesting in the courtyard columns. Emily walked the garden path with Lily Grace pressed against her chest in a sling, her tiny breaths warm against skin. Each step felt anchored, real, not survival, living. Nathan had begun renovations on the east wing. "An art space," he explained. "For Lily. She sees the world in color." Emily laughed. "And in dragons and rocket ships." "She'll need a space to launch them," he said. And so the walls filled with paintings, crayons, stars taped to ceilings, and hope scribbled onto windows. Ben, Lily's nickname for Nathan, became part of the bedtime ritual. He read with funny voices, let her braid his hair, and helped her build pillow forts that consumed half the hallways. "You're part of the team now," Lily said one night. "You, me, Mommy, and the baby." Nathan kissed the top of her head. "Team, always?" "Always, always," she confirmed with a toothy grin. Then came the moment Emily didn't expect. Nathan handed her a folder, simple, white, official. Inside, adoption papers. "For Lily," he said, "if you'll let me." Emily stared at him, speechless. "You're already her father," she said finally. "This just makes it legal." They signed together, hand over hand, while Lily drew hearts on the kitchen floor in chalk. A few weeks later, a quiet ceremony sealed it. Just them, Greta, Janine, and a judge with kind eyes. Lily wore a blue tie and whispered to the baby, "You have the best dad now." I checked. Afterward, they had cake and music. No photographers, no press, just joy. Emily began writing again. Small stories at first. Fables, tales of mothers who fought monsters and children who turned shadows into kites. Nathan read each one, printing them and storing them in bound journals. "These are our legacy," he said, "not steel, not marble, but story." One morning, a letter arrived from Nathan's former company, a proposal for a foundation. "We want to name it after Clara," they wrote, "to fund safe housing, creative healing for families." Emily watched Nathan read it. He blinked, once then nodded. She would have liked that. He signed, not as the old Nathan Blackwood, but as a brother, a father, a man rebuilt. They hosted a gathering a month later, neighbors, friends, a garden party under lanterns and laughter. Emily stood before the group, baby in her arms. "We'd like to give her a full name," she said, "Lily Grace Miller Anderson, for what we lost, and for what we found." Nathan lifted the baby high. "She carries 2 families, and all their dreams." That night, Lily gave her sister a drawing of a rocket ship. "It has snacks," she said seriously, "and glitter seats." Emily wept, quiet and full. After everyone left, they sat by the lake. Nathan held Lily Grace. Emily leaned into his shoulder. "Do you still think love is fragile?" He shook his head. "No, love is the strongest thing we have. It breaks, yes, but it also rebuilds." Emily nodded. "Then let's keep building." In the dark, they watched fireflies blink across the water. Lily snored softly in her room. The baby sighed in sleep. The house, once hollow, now pulsed with warmth. A family born not of perfection, but persistence. The estate had a heartbeat now. You could hear it in the giggles echoing from the hallway. The tiny patter of Lily Grace's feet as she learned to walk. The rustle of pages from Emily's typewriter. The hum of Nathan's quiet voice during late-night feedings. There was no longer a singular silence. There was layered sound, domestic, soft, enduring. Emily woke before the sun most mornings, often with the baby nestled against her side and Lily's art taped to the wall above the headboard. She'd stretch, breathe, and listen to life, to peace. She no longer feared it would disappear. She no longer waited for the cost. One such morning, Nathan brought coffee to the window seat where she sat. "You know," he said, "I used to believe control was the only way to avoid pain." She looked at him over the rim of her mug. "And now?" He sat beside her. "Now I know control is how you guarantee it." Emily leaned her head on his shoulder. "We made it through." Greta retired that month. "I've done my job," she said. "You don't need a watchdog anymore. You've built a pack." Emily hugged her tightly. "You were never just a guardian of the house. You were our first grace." Greta smiled. "You were mine." The foundation launched with Clara's name etched into stone, not as a memorial, but as a starting point. Emily spoke at the opening. "Healing isn't a destination. It's a story you tell over and over until it feels like yours." Applause followed, but what mattered most was Lily, watching with proud eyes, and Nathan holding their youngest like something sacred. One night, months later, Emily sat outside by the lake again. Alone this time. Not lonely, just remembering. She took out the contract from long ago, the one she had signed in desperation. She stared at it. Then she tore it gently, letting the pieces fall into the water. Nathan found her moments later. "You could have kept it." "I kept the lesson," she said. "Not the chains." They lay in bed that night, lights low, children breathing nearby. Nathan whispered, "If you had to do it all again, would you?" Emily didn't hesitate. "Yes, not because it was easy, not because it was right, but because it made me the woman who could survive it and still love on the other side." He kissed her shoulder. "Then maybe the promise wasn't a price. Maybe it was a door." She smiled in the dark. "And this is what we built behind it." Outside, the stars blinked above the estate. Inside, love hummed in lamplit rooms and bedtime songs. There would be hard days again. There always were. But they had roots now, names, memories, futures not just imagined, but lived. And sometimes, when the world quieted just right, you could hear it, not silence, not sorrow, but the sound of a promise kept. If you've made it this far, let us know what you thought about the story. Rate it from 1 to 10 in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you're not subscribed yet, don't forget to subscribe to catch all our upcoming stories.